Today we got a great program. We're going to talk about three things. First, we're going to talk about stories around the country, people being detained by ICE, what happened, how could it have been prevented, things to be concerned about. Second, we're going to talk about what happens. So in the past, we have discussed what to do to prevent an ICE arrest. Today, we're going to talk about what happens when you're detained by ICE. What happens if you have an order of deportation? What happens if you don't have an order of deportation? So that's the second thing we're going to talk about. And third, what can you do today to prepare if you're worried about being detained by immigration? This is not a know your rights scenario that we've discussed before. What to do in the event of ICE contact? No, we're going to talk about how to prepare in case you do find yourself in ICE custody. What can you do today?
Calificas para ser legal, quieres saber, solo llama al abogado Andrés Mejer.
My name is Andrés Mejer. I'm a published author, speaker, and immigration attorney. And today we're going to start with stories from around the country. Immigrants who are either afraid of ICE and decisions that they make, or individuals that have gotten detained by ICE and what could they have done or what can they do now. So first we're going to talk about Eli and Fnu. They were detained in Philadelphia. They are from Indonesia. They came in 1998 and immediately filed for asylum. They have two children, both born in the United States. The oldest is in college. Now, Eli and Fnu, they're ethnic Chinese in Indonesia, and they're also Christian. So they are a double minority. Indonesia, for those that don't know, predominantly Muslim country, allegedly the largest democratic Muslim country in the world. I say allegedly because democracy is well, let's not get too political. Given the state of our democracy here in the United States, I don't think that we're one to judge someone else's democracy. But either way, they were afraid. They were being targeted. Life was difficult in Indonesia. They came here. They filed for asylum. In 2007, it was denied. They appealed. I'm assuming that appeal was also denied. They were ordered deported. ICE picked them up on July 2nd. There's conversations and text messages and video from people that witnessed them being detained. ICE stopped their car, and once they determined who the parents were, they detained both the parents, leaving the children in the car. Now, the eldest is an adult, so that isn't in and of itself a problem. She could certainly take her sister, who's a teenager. It's not like they left a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old in a car by themselves. That is not what happened. Now, but why am I telling you this story? How is it different from anybody else? Well, in April 2019, Third Circuit Court of Appeals came down with decision Liam v. U.S. Attorney General, which was the circumstances very similar to Eli and Fnu. Liam was also Indonesian, also Christian, filed for asylum. He was denied and was ordered deported. Now, he later filed a motion to reopen that order of deportation, saying, listen, the conditions in my country have only gotten worse. They haven't gotten better. In the past 10 years, I am now more afraid today than I was back then. Immigration judge denied it. They appealed to the Board of Immigration Appeals. Board of Immigration Appeals denied it, the motion to reopen, and then it went to the Third Circuit. And the Third Circuit said, Board of Immigration Appeals, you can't just deny. You have to analyze the information. You have to explain the reasons for or against it, because they said it appears like the Board of Immigration Appeals completely ignored the additional documentation that was provided, and it was extensive. They overturned that denial, granted the motion to reopen, and remanded to the immigration judge to hold a hearing to determine, well, is there in fact changed country conditions? So Liam doesn't automatically win and get asylum or withholding or something like it. He still has to, now he just gets his day in court, where before he didn't have it. So Eli and Fnu can do the same thing. That was a Third Circuit Court of Appeals, which is where we sit, where it includes New Jersey and Pennsylvania. And it was favorable very favorable, because they can do the same thing. File a motion to reopen and say country conditions have changed. It's now more dangerous than it was when I last filed. Think of Venezuela, for example. If somebody filed for asylum 10 years ago, given the circumstances now, completely different. Also, Syria, Iraq. There are plenty of places in the world where conditions have gotten worse. In general, for just about everybody. They can always get worse for you in your specific scenario. Every case is unique. Second, we'll talk about a Mexican woman. She sent her kids to Mexico for a month's vacation. 3 U.S. children, 13, 10, and 9 years old. And they came back with somebody, we don't know who, to enter the United States by airport. So this is an adult that had a visa to enter the United States and was bringing her children back. This individual was denied entry. We don't know why. We don't know the name, and we don't know why he was denied entry, but he was. So Customs Border Patrol, they took the 3 kids, again, they're underage, 13, 10, and 9, and said, listen, someone needs to come get you. We can't just release you, you're minors, which is totally appropriate. Now, they reached out to the Mexican consulate. The Mexican consulate reached out to mom, and mom wrote a piece of paper and gave someone else permission to go pick them up, who was a U.S. citizen. And Customs Border Patrol said, I'm sorry, this is not legally sufficient. I can't release these children to this individual. Anybody could have written this. It wasn't notarized. It wasn't drafted properly. So mom ultimately did have to go. And the kids were released to her. She was undocumented, and she was afraid that if she went to get her children, she would be detained by Customs Border Patrol, and the children would be in the same exact scenario. So we can all understand the fear. I can't imagine what I would do. I'd probably go there. But, everyone has to make a different decision. It's a hard decision to put oneself in, and let's not forget, we're talking about something that happened in a couple hours. So she did try to do the safe thing. At the end of the day, she did the right thing. Now, why was this individual not admitted? We don't know, but he could have had a prior visa overstay. He might have had prior criminal conduct in the United States. He might have filled out the petition incorrectly or made a misrepresentation, which they consider fraud, or his answers may have been inconsistent with the visa. For example, he comes in as a tourist and they ask him, why are you coming to the United States? Oh, I'm coming to work. Automatic denial. He comes in, he says, oh, I'm coming to meet my fiance who's a U.S. citizen, we're going to get married. Automatic denial. Why? Because immigrant visa, tourist, means you're here temporarily and you can't work. So if you're working, that's a violation. If you're now going to get married and your spouse is going to file for you, well, that's inconsistent with the intent of being here temporarily, deny you. She can file for a fiance visa, or you guys can get married and she can file for you. So we don't know why, but we just know that he was. Now, every airline has a form that parents can fill out giving authority to someone to travel with their child. Typically, it requires both parents. But I don't know what was done in this context. I can only assume something like that was done, but it was not found legally sufficient. For whatever reason, I don't know. Because certainly when the second person came to pick up the children, that was a handwritten form. It wasn't a form, it was a handwritten document, which was inadequate. It wasn't prepared by an attorney, wasn't a power of attorney. It was just, I give so-and-so permission to pick up my kids, but it may have only been signed by mom and not by dad. So again, we don't have all the details. It is possible to arrange transportation. It is ideal to do it with somebody who's a U.S. citizen or green card holder, or a family relative. That's the ideal scenario. Anything less, the process has to be rock solid, or here's what happens. Person gets denied visa, and then you have to scramble and someone needs to go pick up your kids. Now, if it was my kids, I'd be at the airport. That's the bottom line. I would have been at the airport waiting for them. So that's scenario number 2. Scenario number 3. Trevor James. He was arrested by ICE despite having a green card. June 5th, 2019, ICE came to his job in Raleigh, North Carolina, and took him to a detention center in Atlanta, Georgia. That is the worst court in the entire country. They deny the overwhelming majority of cases. There's one judge, Angela Reines, that in 5 years had 200 trials and denied every single one. I don't know how she can stay. I don't know how she hasn't been reversed. I don't know how she keeps her position when that's... I mean, I can't imagine out of 200, none of them had a viable case. Now, Trevor's from Trinidad. He entered the U.S. on a student visa. He applied and was approved for a green card, likely due to his marriage. None of the articles I read actually says. It says he had an immigration attorney who was helping him remove conditions on his green card. Well, remove conditions on his green card tells me that his marriage was less than 2 years. And he likely never filed timely to remove the conditions on that green card. None of the articles mentioned his wife, so I assume he's separated from his wife. What likely happened is after the 2 years, so he got his green card within 90 days before the 2-year anniversary, he should have filed to remove the conditions on his green card, showing that it's still a legitimate marriage. So he either was a joint petition, they filed together and they're still together, or they're divorced. He's filing on his own and saying he entered into the marriage in good faith, but it didn't work out. Or third, he entered the marriage in good faith, but he suffered extreme cruelty. His wife was abusive, verbally, physically, or otherwise, and he needed to get himself out of that relationship. He needed to do one of those 3 things. He didn't do any of them. And because he didn't do that is likely why ICE picked him up. But it gets worse. He's been detained for 6 weeks and still hasn't seen a judge. He was also just advised that he was quarantined because of a measles outbreak, which means another 30 days in jail. So he's going to be over 2 months detained with a green card, no indication of a criminal record, just because he didn't file timely paperwork. Situation that could have been avoided. Ellie and Fnu could have filed to try to reopen it. Trevor just needed to file to prove that his marriage was legitimate, even if it's no longer current. Moral of the story is you need to be prepared. You need to fight for your right to stay, because if you don't, you may not get a second shot.